Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. An exciting day here on the show. I've got Martin Perelmuter here. Welcome, Martin.
Hey, Jane, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
I hope I pronounced your last name correctly, Perelmuter.
Yes, very different people in my family pronounce it different ways. You hit
Oh,
on one of the pronunciations, so
tell me all
you're
the
good.
ways. What are all
No, we're not going to get into. We only have 40 minutes, so
okay? So, Martin, you are the owner, co-owner, I guess, with your wife of Speaker Spotlight, a speakers bureau here in Canada. You do have some offerings down in the States. I wanted to kind of interview you to get a sense of what you're seeing in the market. We are here kind of moving, I'm hoping, from like pandemic maybe into endemic. I'm hoping that we could just see a little bit of hope on the horizon here in terms of what you're seeing in your business. Tell everybody when you started this business and what it looks like today.
yeah. So my wife Farah and I, we started out in 1995. Dating myself here, so I can remember the timing very clearly because we actually got married, we quit our jobs, we moved, and we started this business all within a couple of months. So if you ever look at the list of most stressful things to do, that you can do in your life,
All of
change,
them.
yeah, change of job, change of relationship, moving is definitely up there. So we just got it all over with at once. But yeah, we took a bit of an entrepreneurial leap of faith. We really didn't know a whole lot about this business. Didn't really know anybody in the business when we started. We had done some research and then thought, okay, well, if we're ever going to do this, now's the time. So that was sort of the summer of 1995, and it was just the two of us working out of a spare bedroom in our apartment at that time. And yeah,
In
fast forward to
you're
sorry.
in Toronto, right?
Yeah, in Toronto. In fact, as I sit here in my home office, which we were just speaking before we sort of started this, working from home for the last 2 years, like many people. Our original home office was about 4 minute walk that way out the window. Like I could walk there and be back here, and you wouldn't even know I was gone. So kind of come full circle in that way. The difference now, we have an amazing team. We've got 31 full-time employees and an amazing roster of speakers and amazing clients that we are lucky to work with. So a lot has changed in the last 26 and a half years. And yet some things remain sort of the same.
Mm. So interesting. I bet there's been a huge kind of evolution in the way that you do business. So, for those of you who don't know, I used to work for a speakers bureau in Dallas. I worked under for the actual bureau for 2 years running their exclusives division, but for 4 years prior to that, representing a speaker under that roof. And really learned a lot. I mean, I sat in on every meeting for 6 years basically and watched the business grow and evolve. We went from three of us and a dog to, probably 35 people at the height of it. And then it was a little bit chaotic, so I left. So talk a little bit. My job back then was to run the exclusives division. So we were starting to see that the speakers bureau business was a little bit of a grind. It's a tough business. It's not the easiest business to run. It's not the easiest business model. What do you think about the future of exclusive speakers for bureaus? Is this something that, having people that can make your phone ring, is that a goal for you moving forward?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that the exclusive relationship can work if it's the right fit.
Right.
So it's a lot about understanding expectations, having shared goals and shared values, and in the right circumstances, it can be an amazing uh, relationship, partnership, and in the wrong situation, it can be a really big problem for speakers and bureaus for that matter. So I
Yeah.
think, like many things, it depends. But we're a big proponent in exclusive relationships, as long as it's the right fit.
And so you mentioned shared values, which I think is really important. What would you, how many exclusives do you have right now? And would you like to see that grow?
Yeah, we have about 70 to 80 exclusive speakers right now.
That's pretty
So
huge.
it,
That's
yeah,
huge.
it's quite a bit. Yeah. And, and we've got about 400 speakers on the website altogether.
Hmm.
So, and I mean, the truth is, we've been reducing the number of total speakers. There was a day where we had 800 speakers on the website. I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, maybe. So we significantly reduced that. And there's not a specific goal to increase the number of exclusive speakers. It's not like we have this number in mind, like
Yeah.
100 or 200, whatever. It's just, continuing to try to find and identify really great speakers who deliver great value to clients, who we can work with well. We can help them grow their business. They can help them grow ours. Those are the kinds of relationships that we're looking for.
Yeah. And you booked somebody 10 times last year and they only want to speak 10 times a year. Hey, why don't we do your business for you next year? It can
Mhm.
all run through us. And I think that it makes really, really good sense in some situations and not so much in others.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really good point. I mean, for some speakers, 40 engagements in a year would be an incredible year for many speakers, and they would gladly take that. And for another speaker, 40 might not look so good. And you get the 40 engagements and they wanted 80 and they're not going to be happy. So again, it really needs to be a good fit.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So that was a little sidebar. For those of you listening in, if you don't know that much about speakers bureaus or how to get listed with them, my goal is to educate you on that. But also, I want for those who are more advanced and are wondering what's going on in the industry, I also want to share with you what we think is hot and fees and things like that. So let's start with a speaker who might want to get their foot in the door with a speakers bureau, and there's a level of readiness that needs to be in place. I kind of mark it on two things. Tell me if this is correct. Number one, their fee has to be at the right level, that kind of so that everybody's making money, because if your fee is $2,500 and the bureau is taking 25% of that, there's not a lot of people making money. There's not enough margin there. So, what do you think the low end of the fee could be? And let's also make sure that we understand that Canada and US are very different in terms of fees.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Well, it's funny that you asked this question because I was just speaking with someone about this, like I think last Thursday or Friday, just a few days ago, and we've never set a minimum fee level.
No.
I know of bureaus that say, we won't book a speaker unless we earn at least, $2,500 commission or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I get that, and I understand why they do that. But for us, we look at not just who the speaker is today when they reach out to us, but who we think they can be a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. So an example, and I'm not going to use a name, but there's a speaker that we connected with about 3 years ago,
Mhm.
and she was getting. Well, she wasn't a professional speaker. First of all, she was an academic who was.
Side hustle. This was her
Yeah,
side hustle. Yeah.
yeah, and she was getting $1,500 a speech. She didn't
Okay.
know what to charge, so she was just charging, and she would have to usually pay her own mileage to get to gigs and stuff. And yeah, so it wasn't a lot for her. And so, I'd seen her speak, and I thought she was really great. And so I thought, okay, you should be charging more for one thing, but I didn't want to shock her or also like changing too radically. So to go from $1,500 to $7,500 is quite a leap. So we said,
Yes.
let's just start out at $3,500 and see how that goes.
Yeah.
And so that went really well, and we started getting a lot of gigs. And then we bumped the fee up to $5,000, and it continued to go very well. And she continued to get busier and busier. To the point we said, I think we need to bump it up to $7,500, and then we bumped it up to $10,000, and now it's in the sort of 12,500 to 15,000 range. So it's a good news story, but it's someone who went from charging $1,500 to $15,000 in 3 years.
Most
But
bureaus wouldn't have looked at her
yeah,
because of that fee. So that just
yeah,
shows that you're in it for the long haul and you're
yeah,
building the relationship with people. And I love that, Martin.
yeah.
I think sometimes I'm in the business of peddling confidence.
Yeah.
if they come to the table with the confidence in their product, I can bring them confidence in the market of what will sell. And
Right.
the marriage of that is brilliant. And I've watched people go up and up and up and
Yeah.
up in their fees. And I see people on your website. Actually, Kendall Netmaker is one of my
Mm,
clients. He's on the homepage of your website. I
yeah. Love Kendall. Yeah.
and Dr. Marie Helene Pelletier, she's one of my clients as well. There's
Yep.
a lot of people that you're working with who are
Yeah.
people who come out of
You know,
my
Kate,
work.
let me just say one other thing with the fee that I think is really
Yes,
important is I think if we tried to start at $15,000, there would have been no momentum out of the gate. It
yes.
probably would have flatlined and we wouldn't have gotten anywhere. So I think that that's really important is, a lot of speakers have a goal of what they want to charge, and
Mhm.
that's great. If that's the way they kind of measure their success, that's not a problem. And I think it's just like you say, having patience, having a plan, and getting there in steps. You don't have to get there in one big giant step.
Yeah.
So for us again, but to go back to your question, probably under $3,500 doesn't make a lot of sense for us.
Okay.
And most of our speakers are more in that $7,500 to $15,000 or $20,000 range.
Right, right.
So that's,
And,
but it's always great to have those people who are a little bit less, who serve clients well, and they, the idea is, hopefully they work their way up and can get to where they want to get.
and I want to make a note that we're talking Canadian fees.
Yes.
Talk
Yeah.
about the differences because where Martin's saying 3,500, US bureaus might say 7,500
Yeah.
or 10K might be their minimum. So just know that.
Exactly.
The second thing that needs to be in place is a really strong demo video. Now,
Mm.
I remember a story that you told me, I don't know, 10 years ago. I don't remember a lot of things, Martin, but I remember this story where you talked about back in the day when I think we had DVDs of videos, and you sat down with a client and you showed them a series of videos. Do you remember this story?
Yeah, you've got a great memory. So I think I know exactly the story you're talking about.
Please
So
share with it because
yeah,
I want to illustrate how the decision process works.
yeah, this was early on in our business, the first few years, and I really learned a lot about the decision making process. So I got a call. I was working with a client. They were looking to book a speaker for their conference, and eventually he said, "You know what?" He was a VP of this company. I think they were in a rental car business or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want you to come in and meet with me, my president, another VP, and a couple other people who are on the committee for this convention, so we can make a decision. And I want you to bring 10 ideas. Okay, so 10, and bring video clips for each of the 10 speakers.
And
So I,
ideas.
10, so which is more than I would not want to be recommending that many people, but this is what they wanted. So I remember I showed up. I was a little bit nervous because I was kind of young and new to the business in some ways. Again, maybe I think we're probably 3 or 4 years in, and I'm meeting, with the president of this company. I'm in their boardroom. There's 6 or 8 people sitting around the table, and they go, okay. So they kind of, I introduce myself, and I say, okay, I'm going to show you the first speaker, and I give them a little 30-second introduction, and I put in the video. And after 15 or 20 seconds, the president of the company was an older gentleman. He was probably in his late 60s, early 70s. He was just sort of sitting back, arms crossed. And after 10 or 15 seconds, he's like, stop the video. And I stopped the video and goes, let's see the next one. So I'm like, ooh, I guess he didn't like that one very much. So put in the
Whoa.
next one, 10 or 15 seconds, next video. And I'm like, okay, good thing I got 8 more. And
Yeah.
this happened the third, the fourth, the fifth. And we went through all 10, and they didn't watch more than 15 or 20 seconds of any of the videos. And then we got to the end, and he said, can you go wait outside in the hall, please? So I'm like packing up my stuff, and I'm going out thinking this was a disaster.
Disaster. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm waiting out there for about 10 minutes or so. And then my client that I was dealing with, this VP, comes out, goes, okay, come back in the room. I come back in, he goes, we'll take number 4. And I was like, so I thought like I was going to get chewed out for wasting their time or needed to come back with more ideas.
Oh
And
my gosh.
yeah, and I just realized like that a lot of clients, I mean, this might be a bit of an extreme case, but a lot of times they don't have time
Yeah.
they're going to make a decision. There's a lot of experts on communication to talk about this, right? That people make a judgment or decision, on you based on the first few seconds.
Mhm.
So they literally watch 15, 20 seconds of each video and decided. So from that point on, I realized when you're creating a video, you better get the client's attention in the first 15, 20, 30 seconds, or they might not watch beyond that.
I'm so glad we talked about that. Everybody's going to go back and review their first
Mm,
15 seconds. If you know the DISC scale, DISC, that guy was a driver, a typical driver who makes decisions quickly. He's not like a high C where you need tons and tons of facts to make a decision. Those are the accountants. These leaders of these organizations make their decisions very fast. That's why your website needs to impress somebody and get the message across within 10 seconds. And that's why your video needs to do the job within 10 or 20 seconds. And so, revisit your marketing and make sure that that is happening, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Another speaker I was speaking with last week, new speaker to us, very prominent person, was asking me about punching up the bio, making it more interesting, and their list of accomplishments are pretty incredible. And I said, we can play around a bit with the first paragraph, and but at the end of the day, it's really not the bio that's going to get them excited; it's the video,
Mhm.
right? So the bio gives you the credibility, shows your credentials.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of clients, if they're looking at that, hopefully they're reading your bio and speech topics or presentation topics. But it's then they're going to watch the video and then they're going to make a decision very quickly based on that, whether they think you're interesting, exciting enough for them, the right fit for their audience, whatever it is they're looking for.
Right, right. Love that. We have a summit coming up and we're going to do a pitch fest.
Hmm.
I'm going to invite you. Or did I already invite you? I can't
I've
remember.
done one of those for you on.
With me before, but I'm hoping you'll do another one.
Yeah, I'd love to.
I would love to, we're going to give people probably like 60 seconds to impress our panel of judges, which will be event planners and speakers bureaus and maybe association people. So I'm very excited about that coming up. Okay. So, moving into this next chapter of 2022 and
Mhm.
2023, do you believe there is a pent up demand for live events and that we are going to see something really good happening in the future?
I do. I absolutely do. So, again, the Canada US experience is a little bit different.
Yes.
But here in Canada, we were 85% virtual in 2021. 85% of our bookings were virtual. In the US, I know there's a lot more in person events, but we were seeing it gradually getting more and more and more in person as the year went on.
Yeah.
We got to about 70-30 by October, 60-40 by November. And the first week in December 2021, we had the very first week since the start of the pandemic where we had more in-person bookings than virtual bookings. Okay.
Mm.
And then Omicron hit.
Ah,
And then we went back to
come
80-20.
on,
Yeah.
people. Come on,
So,
people.
and we're coming out of it again,
Yes.
slowly. So, which is the good news. But in that latter part of the year before Omicron came around, November in particular, we saw a huge increase in in-person bookings. One of our agents who's been with us for 14, 15 years had her best 2 months. She's a superstar to begin with. Her
Yeah.
best 2 months ever in November and December, largely due to what I think was pent up demand for in-person bookings. So I think it's coming back again. Or again, we're seeing the numbers now creep up again. Actually, not creep up. They're increasing a lot more quickly than they did last year. But I think we're going to get out of this current phase a lot faster than previous ones. And I think there's definitely a pent up demand for live in person events and speaking engagements.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming, people. Be
It
patient.
is.
Be prepared with your virtual in the meantime. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about timely topics. So we're in the middle of, as we're recording this, we're in the middle of the Winter Olympics.
Mhm.
In Canada here, we just got through Mental Health Month, Canadian Mental Health Month. Bell, our big phone company here, does a huge let's talk deal. Talk about kind of timely topics, timely bookings based on Black History Month. I mean, I think that people need to be pitching based on their fit in whatever the month is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple times in the year, we certainly see here in January a lot of mental health related events, although that's a very important and popular topic throughout the year, especially during the pandemic, but even prior to, we see a large demand for mental health speakers.
Mhm.
Black History Month, it's great to see more and more corporate clients doing events around Black History Month. I think at one point it was more just like campus events and schools and colleges, universities. We're seeing a lot more corporate groups doing Black History Month events, which are great. We want to see that the demand for diverse speakers, and whether they're speaking specifically on diversity, equity, inclusion topics, or just on any topics throughout the year. But certainly there's a bit of a surge in that in February.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that in general, we see the topics shift as the world is shifting more than ever. So for a good chunk of the pandemic, mental health, resilience, hugely important topics. After the George Floyd killing in the U.S. and the Black Lives Matter movement, and picking up a lot of momentum in June of 2020, we started to see a much bigger demand for diverse voices, diverse speakers, which is fantastic. We started seeing that happen a few years earlier, which was great. I think just accelerated the movement towards seeing more diverse voices, which is long overdue, and I
Yes.
think very welcome, hopefully for most people.
Yes.
And then as we get towards hopefully the end of the pandemic, and as I say, moving more to an endemic than a pandemic, and getting out of this time that we've been living in, a lot around digital disruption, innovation. Obviously, that's been something that has happened during the pandemic for a lot of organizations. Is their innovation has sort of accelerated. Many companies and organizations have moved 10 years into the future in just a year or two,
Wow.
which is great. And then the other thing is just anything around the future of work right now, I think. And
Mm.
that's a big topic. How are organizations going to handle this when people can fully come back to the office? Are they going to be still remote, in person, a mix of the two? And I think one thing most people believe is that the world of work has changed forever as a result of the last 2 years.
I mean, look at your own shop, right? You
Yeah.
have 30 plus employees.
Yep.
And you told me before we got started that you're giving them the option
Mhm.
to A, come back when they're comfortable, and then
Mhm.
B, decide if they wanted to come in 2 or 3 days a week. Like the future of work is a big, giant question mark for
Yeah.
many companies. And if you can help them navigate through that, and all the differences that are coming down the pike for people, that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's emerging as a really important topic right now, and I think is going to continue. And I think that having said all that, the thing is that you gotta stick to your sweet spot, and you can't change
On,
topics just because the world is changing. And
yes, yeah.
so that's the thing. So I think within those four big buckets, mental health and wellness, diversity and inclusion, digital disruption, innovation, future of work, many people can probably find themselves in one of those
Yes,
areas.
yes.
So I think that that's the thing is, you got to play to your strengths. You got to speak to the things that you're knowledgeable and passionate about. And if it happens to line up with where the zeitgeist is, great. And if not, you keep doing your thing, because there'll still be demand for it. And who knows, 6 months from now, a year from now, everybody might want the topic that you speak on. You just
Yes.
never know.
Yeah, and I really encourage people to, be narrow in the problem that they solve. Don't try to be
Mm,
all things to all people.
absolutely.
That way when the right client shows up at your doorstep, they know that you're the only choice. Let's
Yeah,
make
yeah.
you the only choice. That's really
Well,
cool.
and the speakers, who've been speaking about managing remote teams, or for years, just have a lot more credibility than the ones who are, it's obvious that all of a sudden they just jumped into this because everything changed. So, again, I think it's, if you have that expertise and you develop that, over time, then that I think gives you a lot of credibility that, that you are a true expert on the topic and not just, trying to figure out sort of what the flavor of the month is and jump on the bandwagon.
So we talked about when a speaker is ready to approach speakers bureaus.
Mhm.
And I think the approach is probably the most important part because if you do it wrong, you're not going to get your foot in the door. I remember once, so I worked for Vince for 4 years before the bureau, and Vince had sent out, number one, we had the issue that other bureaus didn't trust us because of where our office was located under the roof of a bureau. So we had to
Mhm.
build the trust very slowly over time. But Vince sent out a horrible demo video before it was really, it shouldn't have gone anywhere really. But
Yeah.
so when I got on the scene, I had about a year and a half and 2 years of undoing some
Mm.
bad marketing in order to rebuild the trust. I want to talk to you just kind of about what your day looks like so that people understand that when they say to themselves, "Oh, I'll just add Martin to my newsletter. He'll love being added and seeing what I have to say every day of the week." No. Okay, like really understand what Martin's day looks like, how full his in basket is, how many phone calls you get each day from speakers. I would like people to really understand why they need to be quite precise about how they do approach you.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, our priority is one, with respect to speakers, is to get the speakers that we're currently working with bookings, right? That's what they want and expect from us. And so that's where the majority of our time is focused, serving our clients who are looking for speakers and serving our speakers who are looking for gigs and finding the right fits. So that
You
occupies,
you said earlier you've been moving your database down in numbers.
right,
You
right,
don't think that more is more. You think
right.
you'd rather focus and really know and understand
Yeah.
what a few hundred speakers are rather than 10,000.
Exactly, exactly. And so, every year we counted it up for a few years in a row, and it would be over 1,000 speakers a year reaching out, sending us either by email or by regular mail, or even on occasion pre-pandemic, showing up at our office without an appointment,
Oh,
drop-ins. Which I give someone a lot of credit for the chutzpah it takes to do that, but not a good strategy. Um, so. So 1,000 a year, so we're talking about 3 or 4 or 5 a day, and so we just can't possibly meet
yeah.
with everybody that reaches out. We do look at everything. I like to see most of what comes in. We have someone in our office who kind of manages them. They've been working with us for more than a decade, so they kind of can, out of every 10 that comes in, they might send 1 or 2 of those to me, and
Okay.
out of those 1,000 speakers, we might end up working with, it's fewer than 10. It's like literally like, maybe less than 1% of the speakers approaching us that way. And it doesn't mean the speaker's not any good. This is the thing that's really hard. It might just be that we have 5 people on this topic who are all sort of comparable, similar price ranges. And our priority is to get those 5 people more work, not add a 6th.
Right.
So there's a lot of different factors. And that's the thing that's tough sometimes, is when we decide not to take someone on. It's not nothing personal. It's not that we don't think they're necessarily a good speaker. It's just like, it may not be where there's a gap in our roster. That's what we're looking for, is where are there gaps,
Yeah.
where there's demand from clients, where we're constantly running into, like, what we could really use is a really great speaker on this topic in this price range, that kind of thing. So it's tough. I mean, it's tough for speakers. I get it. But I think a precise approach, a referral from someone, maybe, the best is, I think, a client that
Client
you work for.
referral is number one. A
Yeah.
speaker referral maybe number two.
Hmm.
I want people to really understand that a speakers bureau is not going to solve all your problems and launch your career if it's not already off the ground.
Yeah.
When they are most interested in you, unfortunately, this is one of the weird little idiosyncrasies about this, is when you're hot It's
Mhm.
when you already have a lot of bookings is when they are most likely to be interested in you, because why? They heard about you from a client because
Yeah.
you're already out there speaking. And so I tend to tell people focus on getting the business direct first, and then we add that on as icing on the cake later on if it's a good fit.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the analogy I like to use is that, we don't have a faucet that we can just turn on and the bookings come pouring out. I wish it was that easy. It's
Yeah.
not. So sometimes I think people do, sign on with an agency or get added to their website and they think that their whole career is going to change. And,
Yep.
sometimes it's a big, US bureau and there's a lot of prestige associated with that. And they're excited. And then 6 months later, nothing's happened. It's like, well, that you might not be their priority. And again, there's no bureau in the business. Doesn't matter how big they are, how long they've been around. There's not a single bureau who can honestly say like I can take any half decent speaker and we can change their career overnight and make them super busy. It just doesn't work like that. It's individuals making decisions, trusting individuals that they work with, and it takes time to build that trust. So it's certainly not impossible. The speaker I mentioned earlier, wasn't, super busy or well known or whatever, but we saw a lot of potential there, and luckily it worked out really well.
Sometimes you're
Um,
looking for a topic. That's where you go. You look into academia in order to find someone who's an expert on a very particular topic,
yeah,
and that's how a star is born. Like
yeah,
that is, it's really cool to be able to discover somebody like that.
yeah,
I want people to know. Okay, so a few basics. Bureaus will typically charge you, the speaker pays a commission of anywhere from 25 to 30%, depending on where their fee is. And what happens after the fact is that any business brought on by the initial engagement should come back to them in the form of spinoff. And if you're not giving bureaus your spinoff, that is probably the biggest no no. One of the things I want people to understand is that it took you a long period of time to get that first booking. Like, you just don't pick up the phone and somebody's saying, yeah, I need a speaker. Oftentimes you have been building a relationship for a long period of time. You've been going out to meetings and doing all these things to get the booking in the first place. And for every pick up the phone, yeah, I need a speaker, there's like 10 times when you have to bust your butt in order to get a booking solidified. And especially right now where it's like you contract and then it's canceled and then you have another contract and you change it, and addendums and COVID clauses and all this stuff. I
it's a
mean,
lot. Yeah.
there's a lot that goes into a booking that people don't really understand behind the scenes.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of times, in our business, you work and work and work on something, and then they don't book anyone. And so, if you do a lot of work and it results in a booking, that's great. Sometimes, you can put in weeks and weeks of work, and at the end of the day, they decide, oh, we're not going to hire anyone, or you know, someone here, their brother-in-law speaks, so we're going to go with them, or whatever it is. And you put in all this time, and you don't get paid for that time. So sometimes you get easy ones, which is great. They make up for the tough ones or the ones that never come to fruition. So, and your point about spinoffs is really good. I mean, if you're a non-exclusive speaker working with the bureau and they're booking you and they're getting no spinoffs from you. I mean, the reality is it says one of two things. Either one, you're not doing a great job,
Yeah.
right? Because I think that spinoffs and repeat business is probably the best indication of how good a speaker is,
Yes.
right? Or two, you are doing a great job. You're just not sending the referrals or spinoffs back to the bureau. So neither of those are really good. So, there's some speakers who do an amazing job of tracking these things back. And Janet Lapp, who's a speaker that a lot of people know, she's, I guess, like a Hall of Famer, I think, from NSA. I mean, she
Yes.
once called me up and said, "Hey, Martin, do you remember 4 years ago you booked me for this insurance conference in Florida?" And I'm like, "I think so, yeah." She goes, "Well, guess what? Someone who's in that audience told their neighbor or whatever, it was some crazy story about me, and that person just reached out and they're going to hire me for their conference, and so I'm going to connect you with them by email." And I'm like, this is amazing. Like, who wouldn't want to book Janet after experience like that?
And let's drill down on that because now not only are you ingratiated to Janet because she remembered something that happened a long time ago, but you also have the opportunity to build a relationship with a new client that you
Mm,
might not have had. And
yeah.
so that's why we don't necessarily just want to cut them a check after the fact.
Yes.
Martin wants to actually get to know this client and be able to serve them in the future as well. And
Thank you. Yes.
check, then you're kind of cutting that off. You're cutting off that opportunity. And I think that
Yeah.
that's a huge
That
reason.
that is such a great point, Jane. Like we've had, speakers and the intentions I think are good. And they're like,
Yes.
and sometimes they'll tell you after the fact, like I just did the gig, and here's the check. Isn't this great? You're getting free money. And it's like, okay, I appreciate the check, but we want the relationship. Like, and also we want to work for it a little bit. If we can help manage
Yeah.
some of those logistics, you
Yeah.
know, like that's great. That's why we're here. And also, again, we're not in the transaction business, we're in the relationship business. We want to try to build a relationship. So yeah, that the earlier you can loop in the bureau, the better. And even if it means like, sometimes the speaker wants to have that dialogue, and that's totally fine. But bring in the bureau as early as you can, so you're introducing them to the
Yeah.
client and to the process, and then it just it's more, it feels like more of a partnership that way.
So for those of you who identify a bureau who you think, hey, those are like cool people, they feel like a really good fit for me. I'd love to do some work for that with them. Maybe you hand them an engagement.
Mhm.
You have a client that you could say, hey, have you ever worked with a speakers bureau before? No, I have not. Well, let me introduce you to Martin over at Speaker Spotlight. He can not only provide, here's what I like about this idea. So you're ingratiating yourself to Martin because you're handing him a piece of business that he wouldn't have otherwise had, and you're helping him build a relationship long term with that client. But also, if something happens with you and you cannot perform and do that event, Martin's got 400, 500 speakers in his back pocket, and he can easily substitute somebody. It gives the client a little bit of backup as well. So I think that that's a nice idea. I don't always love, like, trying to grease the palms of your speakers bureaus, but I think that that's a nice idea to do because it really helps the client as well. It serves on all fronts.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great idea. And yeah, it's an opportunity to begin a relationship, start working together. And we actually just did that with someone in the last couple of weeks, where they had reached out. They were introduced to us. We weren't sure if there was a fit. We are trying to
Yes.
figure it out, and then someone reached out to them, and they said, "Hey, would you handle this?" And with the understanding that this may be the only time we work together, but
Yeah.
I, and I was happy to do it. And I said, look, this can help me convince maybe some of the other people here that there is a demand for what you do. And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
See how the whole, well, why did you want to book them? Oh, well, we had this particular need. Oh, okay. Now you kind of understand it. And I
right,
think also sharing little tidbits, and I don't know the best way to do this. Maybe you can give me an idea. Maybe it's LinkedIn. Sharing little tidbits of, Sun Life Insurance just booked me for a six-city tour, and the reason that they did that was this. This was the problem I'm going to help them solve. Now you're mentally going through your Rolodex to think insurance. Okay, maybe I can book that speaker for some of my other clients and do the same thing.
yep,
Like feeding you ideas of how speakers are being used, and also might just give you some great business ideas that you can then share with your clients, right?
yeah, absolutely. And one of my colleagues always says that we sell anecdotally, and so it's
So feed you anecdotes.
yeah. So you're talking to a client and you go, hey, I just was working with a client recently, and this is what they're looking for, and this is who they went with, and this is how it turned out. And that's like, that's a really powerful way. It's an authentic way
Yes.
of communicating, and yeah,
Social proof.
yeah,
It's social
it's
proof.
social proof. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
really good. I love that. And people should be using that. Don't take my word for it in your opening letter. Here's what so and so said,
Mhm.
and okay. So If someone is reaching out to you, how's the best way for them to like connect with you the first time? Would you rather it be on LinkedIn? Would you want them to land in your email box? Yay, nay?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I don't love the LinkedIn sort of cold call type thing. Like, I typically only accept LinkedIn requests from people who actually know who they are. So for me, that I wouldn't make that my first reach.
Okay.
Yeah, on our website, like on our contact page, we have an area that's for prospective speakers, and it actually says, here's what we need.
Oh,
And there's an email representation at speakers.ca. So that goes to the person who vets them all. So someone can email me, but the reality is, I'm probably going to take a quick look at it and pass it along to the person who kind of does this on a day-to-day basis.
okay.
It's okay to reach out. I'm pretty responsive, as I think you know. I try to get back to everybody, but you know,
Amazing. I don't even know how you keep up, to be honest with you.
yeah, thank you. The one thing though is, you know, if you do reach out to bureau and they get back to you and say, hey, thanks, I wouldn't like put it in your calendar to start following up every week or two or whatever. Like you just, they've got it. Hopefully they'll get back. If you've got something of value to share,
Yeah.
at that point, maybe, hey, I know you're busy. I just thought here's a testimony I just got from a client I just spoke to, or here's an article that I just, published or something like that. But, you don't want to start like, hammering away at them every 2 weeks because it's going to drive them crazy.
Being a
Yeah.
pest. And if you do connect on LinkedIn, don't show up and do the old pitch slap. Like,
Thank
you
you. Yeah.
know,
That's a Ron Tight term.
14. Oh, is that where it came from? Because I have
Yeah.
Jennifer Darling. If you show up and you connect with somebody accepts your connection, they don't want to see 14 paragraphs of information next from you. So just be aware of that as well.
Yeah. I think it's really important.
Martin, thank you so much for your time today. You have been so generous with the value that you've been bringing to the table. We've done things on Clubhouse together. You've been on one of my pitch fests before. I hope to have you on the summit in June. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and I think our listeners will have gotten some good ideas from today.
Well, I hope so. And thanks for having me, Jane. Thanks for the great work you're doing. I think you're giving speakers, realistic hope, right? So, and the tools to accomplish what they want. So it's one thing to tell
Pent up
someone,
demand, everybody. Pent up demand. It's coming. It's coming. Hold
yes,
tight.
it's going to
Hold
be a good,
tight.
yeah, it's going to be a good year. It's off to a great start. I find, despite everything, and I do think it's going to be a really great year
Yeah.
this year. And
Level up your virtual and hold tight. That's our advice for today.
that's a great advice.
All right. Thank you, Martin.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Jane. Appreciate it.
See you soon, wealthy speakers.